I was just supposed to drop off a KFC order and leave. Simple, right? But then she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "If you're brave enough, stay." I didn't know it then, but in that moment, everything inside me shifted. One woman, one night, one question I'll never forget. What happened next is something I still can't shake off. A memory that haunts me to this day. If you've ever crossed paths with someone who changed your life in an instant and disappeared before you could figure out why, stories for you. Tap like to support true emotional storytelling and hit subscribe if you believe that sometimes. All it takes is one quiet invitation to change everything. My name is Noah, and I'm 22 this summer. I've been doing something I never imagined, delivering KFC orders around Asheville, North Carolina. It's part of a summer internship program through my college. It's more of a side gig than a real career step, but it pays the bills, and honestly, it keeps my mind quiet. Asheville is calm. That's the first word that comes to mind when I think of it. Nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, the town is full of old bookstores, cozy coffee shops, quirky artists, and soft jazz spilling out of vinyl stores. It's the kind of place where nothing dramatic happens, and that's oddly comforting. The rain falls often here, not the kind that shocks you with thunder, but a steady, gentle drizzle that makes everything smell like wet pine and fresh pavement. Sometimes I'll walk past the library on Montfort Avenue and wonder what it would feel like to truly belong in a place like this, a place that feels so alive, yet still so peaceful. Other times, I just drive, delivering buckets of chicken to people who are hungry and unbothered by the world outside. I live in a tiny studio apartment above an old shoe repair shop. The ceiling's cracked, the paint's chipped, and my roommate's hardly ever around, so I spend a lot of time alone. Too much time and way too much space in my head. The truth is, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. My major doesn't excite me. My friends feel distant. I'm good at pretending things are fine, but inside it feels like I'm floating, just a few inches above the ground, waiting for something to make me feel grounded again. Then, on one ordinary Thursday evening, I knocked on a door, and everything changed. It was one of those Thursdays that feels a little unreal. The sun had already dipped below the hills, and Asheville was bathed in that soft golden hour glow, the kind that makes even cracked sidewalks look poetic. I had one last order before I could clock out, a KFC family combo with extra biscuits. The address was in Montfort Hills, a quiet, upscale part of town I didn't usually deliver to. I followed the GPS through winding streets lined with tall oaks, and parked in front of a house that looked like it had been pulled straight from a Southern Living magazine. It wasn't flashy, just timeless. White shutters, ivy creeping up the sides, and a wide front porch with a rocking chair that seemed like it had 1,000 stories to tell. Till I grabbed the bag, walked up Thepeth, and knocked twice when the Durapond, I nearly forgot why I raced there. She stood there, Vivian, mid to late 40s. Maybe auburn hair falling in gentle waves past her shoulders. She wore a forest green cardigan, simple earrings, and no makeup. That I could see boots. Something about her felt composed, like the air around her paused before moving again. Her eyes met mine, calm, curious, unbothered by my obvious awkwardness. It managed to croak out your order. She took bag from my hands, and for a split second our fingers touched. That's wench said it. Soft, almost amused. If you're brave enough, stay. I blinked. Did I hearth it right? She didn't laugh, didn't wink, just looked at me like she already knew what I'd do. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. I felt my face heat up, heart pounding, like I just sprinted uphill. I looked at her, then at the porch steps, then back at Harriganey. I should probably finish my shift. As stammered. She gave a small nod, like it didn't surprise her one bit. Suit yourself, she said, still smiling, that knowing smile. The door closed quietly. I stood there for a moment longer, hands still courtly hovering by my side, brain doing somersaults. And then I walked back to my car fast, like I needed a stance. But even as I drove away, all I could hear in my head was her voice. If you're brave enough, stay. That night I barely slept, and when I did, she was there in Mimond, in that porch light in Thequiot. It had been a week since the delivery, a week of replaying her words in a loop. If you're brave enough, stay. I kept telling myself it was just a strange, flirtatious moment, something meant to be forgotten. But the truth, I couldn't forget her. That afternoon, the sun finally broke through the gray skies that had blanketed Asheville. For days the air was crisp, the sidewalks warm. I decided to take a walk through Weaver Park, my favorite quiet spot near campus. I had music playing through my earbuds, my mind drifting when something's immune caught my eye. Froze. There she was, Vivian. She was walking slowly along a gravel path, her hands tucked into the pockets of a long Gollyvecca lead coat. The late sunlight lit her hair like it was spun copper. She looked exactly how I remembered, composed, graceful, almost out of place in this world. I panicked, looked away, pretended to fiddle with my phone, but it was too late. She'd seen me, Shesmilled not. The mysterious half-smile from the porch. This one was warmer. Familiar, she approached, unhurried, and stopped in front of me. You look familiar, she said, eyes sparkling. I swallowed hard. I delivered your KFC a week ago. Her smile widened. That's right, the delivery boy who ran away. I laughed awkwardly. I wasn't sure if you were serious, I use. Then after a beat, she added, Are you busy right now? I shook my head. Then walk with me. It wasn't a request, it was soft, but it was a challenge. We started down the path, falling into rhythm, shisked about school. I told her about fine internship, my confusion about the future. She listened without interrupting. She shared her story, a former literature teacher, recently divorced, no children. She'd moved to Asheville 2 years ago to start over, loved poetry, listened to vinyl jazz records on rainy mornings. I told her I'd never met anyone like her. She didn't blush, she just said, You probably haven't. As we reached the edge of the park, the light beginning to fade, she stopped, reached into her purse, pulled out a small notepad, scribbled a number, tore it off. She handed it to me. I don't usually do this, she said, but something tells me you're worth the risk. Then with that same calm grace, she turned and walked away, and I stood there, heart-pounding, number in hand, wondering what the hell just happened. The piece of paper sat on my nightstand for 3 days. Every night I'd pick it up, stare at the number, then put it back down like it might burn me. I rehearsed what I'd say, then lost then Irv before I could have deal. What was I afraid of? That Shulden answer, or worse, that Shuld? Finally, on a rainy Tuesday night, is it in my dimly lit apartment, phone in hand, hard hammering, I took a breath, tapped the number, and hit call. It rang in set wise 3 times. Then hello, her voice warm, stadive. Kind of voice that makes you exhale without realizing you've been holding your breath. It's Noah, I said, stumbling slightly from the park and the KFC, a soft laugh on the other end. I was starting to think you lost my number. I almost did. I'm glad you didn't. Wetted for a few minutes, then she asked, How about dinner this Friday? We chose a small Italian place, just off Pack Square, dim lighting, brick walls, shakered tablecloths. I showed up early, palms sweating, second-guessing everything I was wearing when she walked in. I nearly forgot how to speak. She wore a simple black dress, her hair down in soft waves. She smiled when she saw me, and something in my chest loosened. You clean up nicely, she teased as she sat down. You'll look incredible, I blurted. We laughed and the conversation flowed as easily as wine. Books we loved, albums we wore out, dreams that never came. True regretsments we didn't realize were important until they were gone. Vivian told me about a poem that saved her life. I told her about a short story I wrote in high school that no one ever read. Time blurred, plates cleared, their restaurant emptied. Around us outside, the streets were damp from earlier rain, wested by the curb, not ready to say goodbye. She looked at me, that same calm, searching gaze. Would you like to come back to my place? She paused. Just to talk, or not only if you feel ready? She wasn't trying to seduce me. There was no pressure, just an open door, a question, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel afraid of the answer. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building just outside downtown Nashville. No elevator, Just a creaky staircase and the faint scent of lavender in Thayhol's Vivian unlocked the door with acquiesce. Click and step it aside. Come in. Stay showed softly. It wasn't anything like I expected, and yet exactly how I imagined she would live. The space was warm, lived in, full off-tractor, worn hardwood floors, shelves overflowing with books, their spins turned every which way. Lamps with golden light instead of overhead bulbs, a few framed black and white photos. A record player sat in the corner slowly spinning. A Billie Holiday album filled the room with smokeyas. There was a kind of peaceful kiosto. The place every corner told a story, make yourself comfortable. She said, slipping off her shoes and heading into the kitchen, stood awkwardly for a second, taking Etol in the flicker of candlelight onth. Windowsill, the faint scent of chamomile and old papers. She returned a few minutes later, 2 mugs of tea and chamomile. It helps with nerves, I smiled. You think I'm nervous? I know you are. We sat on a deep velvet couch, seated beside legs almost, but not quite. Touching the tea warmed my hands. The jazz wrapped around us like a blanket. For a while we just talked. She told me about her mother, how shedded. Suddenly, 2 years ago, how vivid ever. Really recovered how she once started writing a novel but abandoned it halfway through. I used to think words were everything she said. But after a while, even they stopped showing up. It told her about how invisible I felt most days, how it always seemed like I was watching life through glass, close enough to see it, but never really in it. How I'd been going through the motions, hoping Simeon might notice. She listened fully, the kind of listening that makes you forget to filter your pain. At some point, our conversation slowed. She leaned in, brushing a strand of hair behind her eye. Felt her hand gently rest on mine. Anthon softly, naturally weckies. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't hungry, it was slow, deep, like something Bine stitched back together. Inside both of us, her touch was careful, intentional, not asking for anything, just giving. Later, as we sat wrapped in that quiet, she looked at me, not with desire, bet, with something more human, more honest. You made me feel something I thought I'd lost. She whispered hope. I woke to the soft hum of jazz and thesmal, a fresh coffee. For a moment, I didn't move. I just laid there wrapped in a warm blanket, in the kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty but safe. The morning light filtered through linen, curtains painting the room in gold and soft gray. Vivian was in the kitchen, barefoot Harab tied loosely at thuist. She moved slowly, deliberately, like Simone, who had learned to savor small moments. Sat up, ran a hand through my hair, still unsure if the night before actually happened, but the warmth still lingering in my chest told me it did. She glanced over her shoulder and smiled. Good morning. Morning, I said, me voice rough from sleep. She handed me steaming mug, and we stood there for a while, sipping in silence. There was no rash, no awkwardness, just a kind of unspoken understanding. Whiteness. I wanted to ask her what this meant. What came next, but I didn't. Somehow I knew the moment didn't need labels. When it was time to leave, I slipped my jacket on slowly, not wanting the quiet to end. Vivon walked me to Theodore. Her eyes met mine. Call me Noah, she said gently. I nodded, heart swelling with something unfamiliar. But welcome, I will, and he meant it. I waited a day before texting her. Just something simple. I had a real agree at time. Hope you're doing okay. No reply. I told myself maybe she was busy, maybe she needed space. 2 days passed then. For I sent another message thinking of, pressure, just wanted to say hi, still nothing. I called straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Then next day I tried again. Same thing, same silence. By the end of the week I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in Mitch's, the kind of feeling you don't want to name, because naming it makes it real. So on Saturday afternoon, I went back tour building. 'Twas cloudy, the kind off gray sky that feels like a warning. I climbed the stairs, each one heavier than the last. When I reached the 3rd floor, stood in front of her door, heart pounding. I knocked, no answer. I knocked again. A little louder still, nothing. Pressed my ear against the door. The apartment sounded hollow, like it had been empty for days. Stood there for a minute, not knowing what to do, before walking down to the front office. An older man with a clipboard and a tired expression looked up as he stepped inside. "Can I help you?" "Yeah, I'm looking for someone." 5 and third floor corner unit. He flipped through a few papers, squinting. "Oh, Miss Bennett, she moved out." I blinked. "What about a week Hago paid through the end of the month, no forwarding address?" "Are you sure, kid?" I'm the one who locked the door behind Hirsch's gone. I walked back outside down the sidewalk, out into the street. Then I just stopped across the street. I could see her window, once lit with warm, lamp-lightened, soft jazz, now dark, curtainless still. She was gone just like that. No goodbye, oh no message, not even a trace, and something in me felt like it had bien quietly erased the days that followed. Felt like walking underwater. Everything maved, slower sound was muted. Even my own thoughts echoed like they didn't belong to me. Kept reaching for my phone, expecting her name to flash across the screen. A message, a call, anything, but it stayed silent, and so did I. I stopped telling my friends about her. I stopped walking by the building. I avoided the park, but it couldn't stop thinking about her. I wasn't angry, just confused, wounded, in a quiet way, like something beautiful had happened, and I was the only one left to remember it. One night, I opened my journal for the first time in months. Not to write poetry or letters I'd never send, just to remember every detail. I could recall the sound of her laugh, the way she stirred her teeth, Billie Holiday song playing in the background. Wrote it all down, not to let go, but to hold on, because holding on for me was the only way to make sense of what she left behind. And she did leave something behind a week after she disappeared. I found it tucked inside my jacket pocket, one I wore that night. Small folded knot cart, cream-colored, unmarked on the outside. Inside was a, quote, handwritten, delicate script. "Some people come into her life to remind you what your heart still knows how to feel." No signature, no explanation, just that I stared at it for a long time. And then I slid it into the back of my journal, like pressing a flower between the pages. Something fragile, something worth keeping. Vivian didn't belong to me, maybe. She was never meant to stay, but in the short time I knew her, just days, really should taught me more than most people have in years. Not through advice, not through long speeches or grand declarations. She taught me by being exactly who she was, and by leaving exactly when she did, because the truth is, some people don't come into your life to stay, they come to wake you up. Vivian reminded them that connection isn't always about permanence. It's about impact. Some bonds didn't need to last a lifetime to change you forever. Sometimes all it takes, a Sony quiet moment, a cup of tea, a song on vinyl, a sentence whispered at the door. If you're brave enough, stay. I used to think being brave meant holding on, fighting to keep something no matter the cost. But Vivian showed me something else, that sometimes courage means letting go off expectations of needing answers, off wishing someone would come back. She didn't disappear to hurt me. I don't believe that. Maybe she needed to move on. Maybe she was afraid, or maybe she was exactly who she said she was, and starting over moment by moment, and forethought moment. She chose me, and I got to choose her back. Even if only for one night, one sunrise, one soft goodbye that never got said. I still think of her sometimes when I hear jazz, or see a green scarf, or a paspy, a bookstore with the windows fogged up. I wonder if she ever thinks of me. Booty. Don't need talk, no, because what matters is this. I remember her not as someone who left Buddhas, someone who showed me that love, no matter how brief, can still be real, and sometimes that's enough. Have you ever met someone who changed your entire world in just a moment? Not someone new ho stayed forever. Not someone you planned for, Butsomion, whose presence cracked something a pen made you feel again. Trust again, hope again. Maybe it was a stranger. Maybe it was someone you loved but couldn't keep. Maybe, like Vivian, they arrived when you weren't ready and left before. If you knew what they really meant to you, I'd love to hear your story. Share it in the comments below. You never know who else might need to hear it tonight. Then if this story touched something in you, tap like to help others find it, and subscribe for more stories that remind us. Sometimes a great story isn't just meant to be heard. It's meant to be carried with you quietly, maybe even forever.